Well, Mr. MoneyJar is an award-winning financial content creator, podcaster and author, and he's on the line with us here to talk about how understanding your finances more can often open more doors for young people and give them financial freedom. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, Toby. Thank you for such a kind introduction.
You're welcome. So why is it so important for young people to have a good understanding of their finances?
Yeah, I guess in the times we're living in now, look, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We're coming out the back of a pandemic and a series of lockdowns, and these are quite difficult times historically. And so having an understanding of how things like savings and credit and responsible spending work is what's going to help all of us get through these times, but in particular, young people who are just starting out their financial journeys.
Yeah, and younger people are often seen by older generations as being financially irresponsible.
Yeah.
Is that exactly true?
Yeah, it's like a stereotype, widely held stereotype, but actually new research by Virgin Money has shown that Gen Zs are actually the generation that care most about their financial security. So we found that 27% of 18 to 24-year-olds care about this versus 18% of over 55s. This is also the generation that worries most about how the current economic climate will impact their short-term and long-term goals. So this might be quite a surprise to people who hold that stereotype.
Yeah, it's probably Gen Z they're gonna be affected the most by all this, right? Because a lot of older people, they've already got a good job, a lot of them, and maybe they got some money. Whereas younger people, life is uncertain financially when you're young anyway, without all this.
Yes. So younger people certainly seeing the sharper end of this, having to study and go to university in lockdowns. That's not something that I ever had to deal with. But I also want to say to the young people listening to this that the future is bright. And even though the UK is going through a tough time right now, it is going to be the young people of today who are going to drive the growth that this country needs to be able to recover and be prosperous. And I'm hugely optimistic for the generation going forwards.
And why do you think it is that Gen Z and younger people do seem to have better control of their finances, according to this research?
There have been a series of shocks, right, to the country and to the economy. And in the conversations that I've had with people, particularly the pandemic, I remember being younger and just starting out work. And for me, the idea of saving money seemingly for no reason was a bit of an abstract concept. But now when I speak to young people, they've actually lived through a time where, hey, I could lose my job. My situation or my circumstances could change overnight. And so they're actually way more on the pulse when it comes to things like setting money aside and, being more, for example, conscious of the environmental impact of their spending. That's another thing that came out in the research. Gen Zs are way more likely to try and spend money on things that will last longer, for example. Hugely positive.
Yeah, especially with the housing markets these days. It's very difficult to get on the housing ladder. You're going to start quite early to get some money going.
Yes. You need to, buying a house definitely will be one of the biggest purchases that any person makes in their life. We are seeing signs of house prices coming down at the moment, but of course, with interest rates going up, that means that the mortgage deals and repayments are likely to be higher. But there is something that we can all make a start on, and that is building our credit, because by having a good credit history, this is what's going to enable us to have access to things like mortgages and so on in the future.
And it's quite impressive, actually, because this research also says that 18 to 24-year-olds on average have £4,935 in savings, which is only just behind millennials.
Yeah, hugely impressive. I did not have that much money in savings when I was when I was 18 to 24. And hugely impressive when you consider the amount of time that Gen Zs have had to amass that £5,000 versus the 6,000 on average for millennials and the 6.7K for Generation X.
Yeah.
So as I've been saying, like it's a generation that I'm hugely optimistic about.
Yeah. And there might be some Gen Z people listening who don't have that amount of savings. far from it. What advice would you give them to start saving and try and build up some money?
Yeah, so I think in the times that we're in now, saving an emergency fund is super important. If you're not familiar with the concept of an emergency fund, think of it like your personal overdraft. If you were to lose your job, if a large expense was to come your way, I don't know, your car breaks down or like one of the appliances in your house break down, how would you pay for that? Well, ideally, you'd like to be able to fund it yourself. And the way that you can save an emergency fund is to calculate an amount of money, and if an emergency came your way, you'd be able to pay for it. Calculate that amount of money, stick a date in your calendar, on your phone or in a diary, and then divide the amount of money by the amount of months between now and that date. Set that money aside every month, and then you'll have your emergency fund fully funded.
And it's also about having a safety net, I suppose. As you say, if you do lose your job, you can have a few months' wages in there so that you don't completely run out of money as soon as you lose your job.
Absolutely. So the general rule of thumb for emergency funds is 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. But the thing is that it is just a rule of thumb. Monthly expenses are higher than ever right now. So even if it's a lump sum, £500, a grand, we all know what our personal circumstances are. The important thing is to get started and to have something.
Well, where can we go to find out more information?
Sure. If people would like to find out more about these topics, you're more than welcome to come say hello to me. I'm at Mr. MoneyJar across social media, largely on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.